Mini skirt on, dip my body in glitter. Platform sneakers, all the boys want a picture. Two foreign cars, I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya. Mini skirt on, dip my body
Hello,
in
hello,
glitter.
hello. You're now tuned in to the Little Bit a Lot podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and welcome back to another episode. This week is a very special episode because I really thought that it was time for us to lock in, really just be on one accord and get real for a second. You know what I mean? Like, we really, really, really need to get real because life is getting real. And that's because I am turning 29 next week. The day that you guys are watching this, the day that this episode comes out in 7 days, your girl will be entering her last era of her 20s. Oh my gosh. So, typically when it comes to aging, especially with me being a Twilight girly, I often feel very similarly to Bella Swan, where I'm just like, ew, age is gross. I want to be young forever. So, adulting and just the thought of aging is just not something that is really pleasant to me. But at the end of the day, life moves on. You do have to grow. You do have to age. And you do have to come to terms with that. And so I think that my relationship with it has gotten better. Instead of just being like, ugh, gross. I'm kind of just like, now that I'm in therapy, I'm like, you know what? No. Like, getting older does kind of eat. Like, I'm thankful to continue to have made it another year, another year, on this floating rock that we call Earth. Because that's more time that I get to be able to make memories, accomplish goals that I have for myself, and to be able to just see the world. The world is your oyster. And 29 is one of those ages that is like really hitting me hard, but I'm trying to make it into a good thing, I want to make this into a good thing just for the simple fact that it's like everybody and their mother be saying that their 30s is lit, right? So I'm feeling like, you know what? Maybe this next decade is going to be like my best decade yet. So I'm kind of actually excited about that to a certain extent. I've gotten all the hard work out, got my degree, got my job, started the 401k. Now it's time to really, really live, right? That's at least that's how I'm trying to approach this. So I wanted to lock in and really just talk with you guys about different things that I learned or things that I wish I knew in my early 20s as I go into my last year of my 20s. Like, OMG, it just seems like just yesterday I turned 19. Like, that's insane. Now I'm going to be 29. Oh my God. But at the same time, I'm also living, laughing, loving because we stand Pisces season. You guys already know I love being a Pisces down. So it's a lot of mixed feelings, but let's get into it. I wrote down a list. You guys already know I have my trusty iPad here with my notes. And before we do that, if you are watching this episode on YouTube, make sure you give this episode a like, comment down below to let me know what are some things that you wished you knew in your early 20s, and also subscribe. Your girl is on her road to her first 700 subscribers. Oh my gosh, I can taste the 1K right now. So thank you to everybody who has been rocking and rolling with me on this journey. Love you guys down. And make sure you turn those post notifications on. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, thank you. I see y'all. I appreciate you guys. Rate that 5 stars and leave a review to let me know what you think about the episode. So with the first thing that I wanted to talk about that I wish I knew in my early 20s is it's okay not to have everything figured out. As a eldest daughter, I feel like I grew up most of my life feeling like I needed to have everything figured out and needed to have the answers because my family relied on me in a lot of ways. And I also feel like I grew up really independent because I was really impatient. If you guys listen to my episode that I had where I had my dad on, he shared a story about how like I taught myself how to swim. I taught myself how to ride a bike. He just looked up and then I was just rolling down the street. Like, I don't play. When I need to figure something out, I don't really have time to wait on my parents to try to teach me. I don't have time to wait on somebody to take the time out of their day. Oh, I'll get around to it, you know. No, like, I need to do it now and I need to do it quick. And for some reason, I just don't want to wait. So I'm boots on the ground. I'll figure it out myself. So that has led me to really just like do a lot of things on my own because I typically didn't have that patience. And then because of that, that just led me to feeling like everything I do just needs to go as planned and I need to have like all of the answers because I'm just so used to having all the answers and figuring out all the answers on my own, if that makes any sense. But honestly, like, it's really not that serious, guys. It's really for real not that serious. And I wish that I would have known that in the early half of my 20s, for real, because I just felt like the 20s are the time that you're supposed to just like, for real, have everything figured out to a T. This is the foundation. But now that I'm like in my late 20s, half the stuff that I thought I was going to have figured out, I still feel clueless about, for real. Like, when it comes to this thing called adulting, you're not going to have all the answers, Sway. And that's just the tea. No matter how independent you are, whether you're an eldest daughter or not, like, you're not Superwoman, you're not Superman. Like, it's really not going to be like everything that you thought it was. And I'm okay with that now, you know, I'm okay with that now. So, you know, I just feel like the pressure that you have and society puts on people in their early 20s to have their career and their relationships and their life path sorted out is just unrealistic. That's what I've learned. And like I said, you know, nothing I planned for myself in my early 20s went exactly the way I wanted to go. I got my associate's degree later than I thought that I would, and I changed my job a couple of times than I thought I would, a couple more times than I thought I would. So life just really is just gonna do what it's gonna do. It's gonna rush through and wade through like a tsunami, and you just gotta hold on tight to something. Like, I thought it was gonna kind of be more like you're cutting the grass and you're in charge of like holding the lawnmower, and it goes exactly the way that you are lining, like, or almost like when you're like vacuuming and you like vacuum and you're in control of like the lines, the satisfying lines in the carpet. But it's like, no, you don't have the vacuum in your hand, the vacuum handle in your hands when it comes to life. You don't have the handle on the lawnmower. It's a tsunami. And you better just hope to God that you have a surfboard so you can ride just a little bit. Because other than that, you're going to be tumbling and just like trying to just come up for air when you can. That's what life is. Guys, I don't even know what the vacuum example was, for real. I hope that you just pick up what I'm putting down. You know what I mean? But no, for real. So yeah, like, lesson number one, like I said, I wish I knew. Everything's just you're not gonna have everything figured out. You know, go at your own pace because your life path is not gonna be sorted out in that early half of the decade. It's just not. That's just not how it goes, regardless of what you thought your plans were. And the second thing that I wish I knew in my early 20s is that boundaries are a form of self-respect. Like, boundaries are not bad. I've talked about this in one of my episodes where I talked about boundaries, and I figured this was just a great lesson to throw in there because I've learned to say no, and I've learned to really just prioritize not being a people pleaser, going into my late 20s and into my early 30s. And I've distanced myself from toxic people and I prioritize my peace. And that was really, really something that I wish that I would have done sooner. Right? But you live, laugh, love, and learn, for real, for real. The third thing that I wish I knew in my early 20s is your interests and your passions can change, and that is okay. Like I said, being an eldest daughter, being a control freak, I just somehow don't feel well when my interests and passions change, because then I kind of go into like an existential crisis where I'm like, who am I? What am I doing? How come I don't love this one thing that I used to always love? Or why am I suddenly having interest in this one new thing? But it's like, that's normal. Like, that's healthy. You want to be able to grow from stuff that you used to like and discover new things. But for some reason, like, my fear of change and kind of just like wanting to stick with what I know made me feel like that was a bad thing for such a long time. But it's not a bad thing. And embracing multiple hobbies and multiple interests is actually really good for you, not just personally for your mental health, but it could also like benefit you career wise, you know? Like sometimes there's lots of people who dabble into a certain hobby just for them, and then somehow it ends up leading them down a total different path with their career. So I think that leaning into any little interest that you have with hobbies and different things like that is always a good thing, and you need to just listen to your intuition. With my creative journey, like in my late 20s, it's evolved specifically in this later half of the decade in a way that I literally never saw coming, you know, from becoming a content creator, becoming a podcaster, like getting into cozy coloring and like tapping back into things that my inner child liked to do. I mentioned before on my Instagram story that now I'm like becoming an iPad kid and like fully just like downloading iPad games. I'm journaling again. I'm getting into watching, TV shows that I've always wanted to watch. Like, I'm truly just like listening to whatever younger me wants to do and just like going with it. And I don't understand why I had that like turned off for so long. But now that it's on and I'm listening, sweetie, like I'm picking up the call and I'm doing what I gotta do for me, and it's like so fulfilling, and it just feels so good. And the fourth thing that I wish I knew in my early 20s is comparison is a trap, babe. Okay, I spent so much time in my early half of the decade comparing myself to everybody on social media, comparing like my life timeline with other people's timeline. But at the end of the day, everybody always says it, but it's so true. Everyone's journey is different. Like, it's okay to accomplish your milestones at your own pace. Like, just because this person and that person already have a home, already have kids, have this, have that, doesn't mean that that's what's meant for you at that moment. And it's so easy to like compare yourself with like your local towns, like social media, with people that you went to high school and college with, and seeing like their different milestones. But at the end of the day, all you can do is just wish them well and just know that whatever it is that you want is going to come when it needs to come at the time that it needs to come. So if I could have just like gone back and not like compared myself so much, like I would have just been like a lot better off. But now that I'm in my later 20s, like I am so much more secure with my timeline and going, living my life the way that I want to, not what I think I should do or the timing that I think I should do it. The next thing that I wish I knew in my early 20s is failure is necessary. Like, failure was just something that I just literally had beef with since I was a child. I'm not sure if I told this story, but in 5th grade, I used to be an all A student up until that point, and then the first time I got a B, your girl was screaming, crying, and throwing up literally in class, like down. Okay, like anything less than perfection was literally a failure to me, and I just hated the idea of being a flop or a failure at anything ever, which is like so unrealistic and just like so much intense pressure to put on yourself. Like, that's insane. Okay. And then I've learned now that like half the time those type of kids end up going through like burnout later in life and then just being like, F it, I actually don't care about like half the things I used to care about in that way. And that's literally the pipeline that I've gone down, where I'm just like, girl, like, if I continue to stress about perfection in the way that I used to stress, I would have went into cardiac arrest by now. For real, for real. Like, I am so glad I take things like significantly less seriously, and I am like way more at peace a little bit with failure. And at the end of the day, like, failure, quote unquote, is not something that like is still fun for me, right? Like, I still struggle with it, but just not nearly like as bad as I used to, I guess. I have a better appreciation for the failures that I've had like in my early 20s, because at the end of the day I had to realize like we all fail at something at some point, every single person. And overall, like, the faster that you fail, the faster you get to learn. And you get to learn like what works for you, what doesn't. So there is a pro that comes out of that con, and it just took me pretty much the entire decade to be like, you know what, okay, I'll take the lessons. And the last thing that I wish I knew in my early 20s is your mental health deserves just as much care as your physical health. I've talked about this in one of my episodes where I discussed like journaling. I wish that I would have prioritized my mental health way sooner. I just feel like for some reason I just neglected it for so long because I just thought it's okay, like I can figure this out on my own and it's just gonna like get better just somehow. I don't know how, but it will. But it's like, no, it's only gonna get better if you help it get better, like your brain needs nurturing just as much as your body needs nurturing. Like, you need to water it, you need to really put in the work. So that's prioritizing therapy and other forms of self-care, and also just like recognizing when you need a break, and overall just being in tune with yourself and like knowing what you need kind of like all goes into that bubble for me. Because for a long time I wasn't prioritizing when I needed a break. I was getting burnout all the time, not using my time off. Like, I literally talked about it one time where like at my previous job, I ended up having like a literal meltdown and like did a no call, no show. And it's like, girl, it should just not get to that point. It should not get up to that point. Like, you can feel it when it's starting to get out of control. So before you reach meltdown status, check in with yourself and be like, what is it that I need? Like, what direction do I need to go? Because the longer like you ignore your mental health, then the more you're just gonna have like crash outs, and you're just gonna have this outer body feeling where you're like, I don't feel like I'm aligned with myself. Who am I? What am I doing? Like, nothing really makes sense. Everything was just cloudy, hazy. It was just a mess. But then the second that I locked in and decided to start nurturing my mental health, being in tune with myself, like, all of a sudden I can see clearly now the rain is gone, like, for real. So I would just say, like, if you are in your early 20s, like, don't neglect that mental health and that self-care, babe. Like, it is important, and I'm so glad that I now have the foundation built to be able to have those self-care, self-soothing techniques and all of the things, the fundamentals that I've learned in therapy to help me navigate my early 30s. I'm feeling a lot more prepared when it comes to that aspect. And I'm really, really glad that I took that leap and decided to put myself first in that way. Like, you can never go wrong with choosing you and choosing your mental health, for real, for real. Those are just a couple of things that I was really thinking about as I've been just really reflective going into my 29th year. I'm really curious to see, like, what are some things that you guys, if you are in your late 20s, or even if you are in your early 20s, like, just life advice and navigating all of it. Like, how do you guys feel? What are some things that you wish you knew? Let me know in the comments on YouTube or on Spotify. But yeah, like, life isn't easy, so I just feel like we may as well do it together and be able to help each other in that way with sharing tips and tricks and advice. Because if you don't have a community or resources to rely on, then it can feel really isolating and really lonely. So I'm just hoping that this video helps somebody out, who maybe you aren't, really locking in and prioritizing your mental health, or maybe you're still in your people pleaser era and you need to take a time to reconsider boundaries that you need to set up soon. You never know. But I think that at the end of the day, no matter what era of your 20s that you're in, whether it's early, mid, or late, it's never too late to try to work on you and prioritize you and being a better you for the future you. And I just think about, like, a lot of the times, like, how future me is going to appreciate the work that the current me is doing right now, for real. I can't wait to get to that point. 29? OMG, bruh. No, it's getting really, really real. It's getting very, very, very real. But all right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I had fun. Hope that some of these tips and things that I wish I knew, can resonate with you guys. And I will see you guys next week. And like I said, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, rate that 5 stars, and leave a review on Spotify and Apple. Bye.
Cause I make rich look richer. Save your breath, baby, I'm not going home with ya.